There are many different groupings of corn. You know, we have sweet corn, popcorn, dent corn, flour corn, and flint corn. And flint corn is what we're talking about today. All these types were evolved from the teosinte plant, which is native to Central America. So corn is a Central American plant. And over the millennia, it's been cultivated in Central America for 4,000 or 5,000 years. And over the many thousands of years, the millennia, it's gradually people saw it, they pushed it a little bit further north. They genetically modified it, if you will, to grow in more northern climates and northern soils. So today we have probably a couple of dozen of varieties. A variety is something that has unique characteristics of flavor, appearance, the kernels, the size of the plant, the growth habit, number of ears per stalk, that kind of thing. So we probably have a couple of dozen varieties of flint corn that have adapted to growing here in the Northeast. And they vary quite a lot. Here's one. This is an 8-row flint corn. And it's called flint corn because it's extremely hard, like flintstone. And you're as apt to fracture a tooth as a kernel if you bite down on this. It's really, you'll see, I saw them crushing some up here earlier, and it really shatters. It's very, very hard, which makes it good for grinding. So this is an 8-row yellow flint corn. It's preferred for cornbreads, and I understand it grinds differently from the white corns. But this one is aptly named Longfellow, and it's you can see it by the size of it. This is a white flint corn. This is from the crop that I grew up at the university last year, and it's not the Rhode Island whitecap flint corn because the Rhode Island whitecap only has 8 rows in it. And unfortunately, I didn't know I was going to be speaking about corn. So I went and I shelled all the corn and winnowed it and put it away to plant for next year. So I don't have any of the nice ears that I grew up there. But I had this one, which I didn't shell because it has 12 rows. But it's a beautiful ear, and it has all the characteristics that we look for when we're selecting to develop this flint corn. The rows are nice and straight. We don't have any wrinkles, no yellow kernels in here, and it's capped over at the end. The kernels are capped over. That's a characteristic of the Rhode Island white flint corn. It has a small shank on the butt end, which allows the kernels to develop on the butt end of it as well. So this has all the characteristics that we're looking for. It just has 4 extra rows. So, that's why I kept it and didn't shell it, because I don't want to put the extra rows in our seed that we're selecting for. If this had 6 rows, it would be very similar to what was grown by the Native Americans in our area in the pre-Columbian times. It would also be similar to what Miles Standish found when he landed. Was it November 1620? All their wheat had spoiled on the 2-month voyage over, and they were in tough straits. I think there were 103 that arrived on the Mayflower, and only 56 made it through the winter. Miles Standish stumbled on this cache of flint corn, and that's what got them through the winter. In 1888, the state purchased the Watson farm up in Kingston, and for the purpose of establishing the Rhode Island Agricultural Experiment Station and the agriculture school. And at the time, the white flint corn was being grown up there, and it was included in many of the experiments. The earliest reference to Rhode Island white flint corn I saw was in 1894 when it was mentioned that it was put in crop rotation experiments. That's the first instance I've heard of it, called Rhode Island whitecap flint corn. And then in 1901, George Adams, who Adams Hall is named for on the campus, he was an agronomist. He spent about 10 years trying to improve the productivity, the yield of the flint corn. And he's the one that came up with the ends being capped over, and he selected for two stalks, 2 ears on a stalk, things like that, things to improve the yield of the crop. But by the middle of the 1900s, though, the dent corns, the hybrids, were producing twice the yield of any of the flint corns. So the flint corns were kind of going by the wayside. It was a matter of economics. The dent corns were just so much more productive. But there were a few people that continued to grow. Families in this area, different farmers continued to grow the flint corn because of its just superior flavor and the texture of it. So it did persist. And they did continue it at the university. And in the mid-1950s, they hired a Professor Wakefield, Robert Wakefield, who's Diane's brother, as an agronomist. And in fact, their father, Fred Wakefield, was the herdsman up there, back when URI had a herd, and a creamery, and one of the most beautiful barns in all of New England, the dairy barn there. And then, you know how at URI they think big? Well, they think of big parking lots. And they tore that barn down. It was a sad day. Dr. Wakefield had a particular interest in the flint corn, and he hired me in 1977, and I got to work with him on a number of different projects, including the flint corn. And that was, we every couple of years we'd plant out, maybe a quarter acre or so, and we keep it isolated. Corn is wind pollinated. You can't have it contaminated by other corn crops. And so it was a neat little project to work on. And then Dr. Wakefield retired in the mid-'80s and handed it off to me. And I still try to plant a tenth to a quarter of an acre every other year. The seed will keep very well for 5 years, 8 years, if it's kept in cool, dry conditions. So I try to, from that tenth of an acre, I might get about 250 pounds of kernels, shelled kernels, and out of that, maybe 25 to 30 pounds are goods I've kept the best ears from, and that we produce the seed from. So we try to keep it going that way, and I hope somebody's going to continue it after I leave. So if you're interested in growing flint corn, we always keep some seed up there. If you want a couple of pounds, give me a call, and we'll get you started. Are there any questions about the corn, or growing it, or?
We believe that the crow brought a kernel of corn and a kernel of bean in his ear from the southwest.
Okay.
And the particular type of corn that was found amongst our people is a species from the southwest. And one of the other things that was really interesting about our creation story is they believe that every time we send a prayer, 4 sacred birds come together. The eagle starts off the flight, the hawk flies beside him with a strong eye, the woodpecker knocks on the door, and the crow has the name of God, Katantuit, in it. So the crow's name has the word of God in it, and only the crow can speak to God and give the message of the prayer. And so the crow has many sacred representations. But being that he brought sustenance to the people, which was the corn and the beans. When the people are buried, they are buried towards the southwest, even here in Narragansett.
Oh, really?
And that's part of our creation story. So when you see the burials, like the Wampanoags, they ought to be facing east, because they believe they bring up the sun in the morning and set it in the evening.
Well, the Wampanoags were instrumental in, you know, the story of Squanto, and I mean, it was because of that winter in 1621 where they befriended Massasoit and the Wampanoags, and Squanto showed them how to go about planting the corn. And that year, in 1621, they planted 96,000 hills of corn. And Squanto showed them about how to capture the fish, the river herring coming up. And they put 3 river herring in each hill, all with the noses facing to the center of the hill. And can you imagine that? 96,000 hills of corn with 3 fish in a wonderful fertilizer for each hill. Really, you know, a daunting task. And they never would have made it without the assistance of the Wampanoags. On the Flint corn, usually you get 1 ear per stalk. They've done breeding to try to increase that, but usually it's 1 ear per stalk. And our Rhode Island white Flint corn is a fairly weak-stemmed. You know, there are a lot of things that can go wrong. You know, it doesn't take much of a wind to lodge it. You can lose your crop that way. It makes it very, very difficult to pick. It's no 2 years are the same. And these are all indicative of individual varieties. That's what makes them a variety.
Are they able to grow this kind of corn, say in Iowa?
There are different ideas on that. You will read in places where Rhode Island Flint corn cannot be grown outside of Rhode Island. Well, I know a number of people that do, but it does. I have also read that it won't breed true for multiple generations if you were to grow it further west. You may get it to germinate and grow, but it won't continue to.